This week we're going to be looking at Chapter 8, which is about visual modes of communication. The next project that you're going to complete is going to have a visual aspect. So this PowerPoint will kind of give you some tips on how to start thinking about and creating that piece. First, we'll start with just visual text in general. Visual texts are just as important as verbal or written text. If you think about it, you are constantly looking at visual text. Billboards, posters, signs, commercials, advertisements, all those things are considered visual text. It's important as a writer to think critically about these visual text, just as critically as we think about written text. And then it's also important to keep in mind that every visual text involves a series of choices, and you will be expected to make all of those choices to create a visual text for this project. The purpose of a visible text, like many times, visual images carry more emotion than writing. A lot of times, if you look at a photograph or a picture or an image, it is going to cause you to experience a variety of emotions, whereas something written may not always do that. Images also help us attach emotions and bodily sensations. That's one thing to specifically keep in mind as we're working on this project is how are we going to appeal to the audience's emotions. And then lastly, a lot of folks just think about visual images as photographs, but images can include graphs, charts, logos, tattoos, and photographs. So as you're thinking about how you're going to design this, think about what types of visuals you could possibly include. Your audience. You must consider how different audiences respond to different images. So as you're working on this, it is really important that you have your audience in mind. Think about how an audience of teenagers would respond to something versus an audience of 60 or 70-year-olds. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. Because we can't often predict the associations others will have with the images that we use, it is also very crucial to test these with intended audiences. So if you are using an image, ask someone in your intended audience how that makes them feel. That is going to help you make a better choice of what you place on your visual communication that you're creating. Remember that you want to be respectful of your audience's beliefs, values, and opinions. You are trying to engage your audience, not alienate them. I think that's something a lot of people forget. They really want to pack an important message with whatever visual or image they're using that they forget that they're actually trying to engage, and not have the image be so powerful that someone is turned off from what you're including. You also need to consider the visible context. When designing visible text, remember that you rarely get to be there when the audience sees your visual communication. So you really need to pay attention to the context. Think about, what the reader or what the audience is going to do when they actually see this. If you're creating a billboard, people are going to see it as they're driving down the highway. They're not going to be in an office setting. So you want to really think about how you're going to design the context so that it's most impactful to your reader. You also want to think about how visual communication that is poorly designed often fails. So going back to that whole billboard example, if you are creating a billboard and you have 500 words on it, obviously someone driving by isn't going to be able to read those. So you do want to pay attention to the design as you're creating this. Signs and posters and flyers are often placed where they compete with others. Think about a message board at a college or an announcement board at a coffee shop. They're packed full of hundreds of flyers. So what can you do to make yours stand out to grab someone's attention? Some strategies to consider, again, pathos, ethos, logos. So think about the feelings and emotions that you want to evoke in your reader. Have limited elements. Again, you don't want this to be too crowded that people miss the main purpose. You should have a visual path. So think about what the audience should look at first, what you want them to pay most attention to, and then you also want this to be unified. You want it to look professional, so that people get that professional feel. And then lastly, you want to make sure that you're emphasizing the most important aspects. So think about, is the image the most important part? Is the call to action the most important part? Is the logo the most important part? Think about those as you begin to design this type of visual communication.